gays and arcades is just the ultimate win. Hi, hello, and welcome or welcome back. I suppose my name is Autumn, and I'm only saying that because I feel like I never actually introduced myself here. So, I missed last week. This video was meant to be then, but my brain has been not my friend in terms of just not letting me do things. I will sit down and do my work. Well, I will sit down to do my work, and then it will not let me. So, love that. No, I'm not going to sit here and talk about that for too long. I mean, this video is certainly not going to be as long as the last one, and the last one wasn't even as long as I thought it was going to be anyway. So, this is part 3 to my little Heartstopper series. We had part 1, which was the review of the first 2 books. Then we had part 2, which was the first half of the Netflix series. And this is part 3, the second part of the Netflix series. If you haven't watched the first 2, then I recommend doing that first. Also, once I've done with this video, uploaded it, all that good stuff, I will be adding everything to a playlist. And then if I do cover more Heartstopper stuff in the future, say when the new series comes out, that kind of thing, I can just add them straight in here, so you can get all the Heartstopper goodness your heart desires. Episode 4, Secret. Don't just read straight from your script. There's a little bit of shuffling going on between what happens at the end of book 1 and the beginning of book 2, basically to make things a bit more seamless for the series. It basically just means that we can pick up right where we left off at the end of the last episode, with Nick showing up in drenched at Charlie's doorstep. I genuinely thought I got all the names wrong there, but no, I didn't. That's right. It doesn't make any plot changes, really. It's just one of those things where you go, you want a bit of... It's good for continuity. It's not a direct adaptation, but I ain't docking points for that kind of thing. I say docking points or adding points as if I have a point system going on, but who knows? Now, in the book, after he's shown up in the rain and all that, there's a point where Nick and Charlie are sat together in the conservatory, and it's the first time that we see the two of them discussing the fact that Nick's realised that he's bi. Now, the dialogue, much of that part of the dialogue is moved to a scene later on, because it's an important scene character-wise. It's a big breakthrough moment. But I think that scene itself, if you will, is cut because a large part of it features Charlie's little brother, which it does look like they've just decided to axe him from the series. Now, during my last video, I mentioned a character that I just don't understand the presence of, and that being Imogen. Now, in this episode, we have a little scene showing that her and Nick are sort of closer friends than it would perhaps show in the first half of the series, and also that there is more between them than she's in this friend group with them and has a crush on him. But I still don't fully feel aware of why her presence is there, kind of thing. I don't know if that sentence made proper sense, but I think you know what I mean. I would be interested to see if any of you who have watched the series but never read the books, or read the books afterwards, I would be curious to know what your thoughts on her are. And I don't just mean whether you like the character or not. I'm curious to see where you feel she fits into the plot, because I don't see it personally. I don't see how she fits in. I feel like there was more that could have happened. I thought she was going to be a bit more of a spanner in the works, a kind of, oh, it's a bit like when turns out Ben had a girlfriend, when there's the whole like awkward date thing going on later, or that she was going to maybe accidentally out somebody or something like that. I'm not saying that her character would do that on purpose, but I feel like she's a bit clumsy around that kind of thing. You know, the whole I'm an ally bit. She's a bit clumsy around that kind of thing, and I thought that maybe she would be more, but I don't think she is. Also, if I sound sniffly, it's because it's allergy season, so I'm kind of nasally. Apologies to all. So we get a couple of bonus scenes right off the gate. First up, it's a scene with Tara, Darcy, and Elle. It's another one that oh, and Tao as well, right? Yeah. It's another one that just sort of fits in, even though it's new kind of thing. I'm sure if, you know, if these characters were developed in the books, the scenes would look just like this kind of thing. And I always enjoy seeing the way that Tao and Elle's relationship develops. I think they're very sweet. And then we get a bonus scene with Charlie and Nick in the art room. First up, I like this because we get our emotional support art teacher. I always enjoy seeing him. What I like about this is that you get to see them communicating. Now, I understand from that entertainment point of view why little miscommunications can be, you know, intriguing and all that sort of thing, but I can't stand it. Miscommunications as a plot device, it's never been my thing, even though I almost definitely have written it in my stuff somewhere. You know, I understand why it's entertaining to other people, but in this case, it's so nice to see them just talk to one another, because they understand that this situation is tricky and they don't want it to become like Charlie's last relationship. It's nice to see, not just in teen and young adult fiction, but in any and all romantic, I mean fiction in general, but especially romantic fiction. You don't get proper communication very often, and it is a heavy trope, is miscommunication of the romance genre, and it's nice to see that flipped a little bit. We have oh, actually, I say there were two bonus scenes there. This isn't really a bonus scene, but it is very different from the way it works in the book. So this is the first time we see them properly, non-montage style, at rugby practice. And in the book, I want to read this properly. Just forgive me for reading straight from my script, but I feel like I wrote it better than I could. I don't. My script isn't exactly what I say on camera. I tend to go, right, this is what I'm trying to say, and then it comes up here and little sentences will be the same, but I just write what I need to say and then almost half ad-lib it. But yeah, so in the book, Charlie gets tackled and hurt, that leading to Nick taking care of him. This scene gets kind of moved to later, meaning they're taking care of him, by the way, because that wasn't clear. Sir, who fucking wrote this script? But in the series, Charlie's reacts with fear when it comes to tackling somebody else. Overall, his issues boil down to feeling like the other guys just see him as a gay stereotype, meaning that he wouldn't be good at sports. There is certainly evidence to back him up, given how much he was bullied, but a large amount of his feelings are what he's internalized. You can understand where he's coming from, you know, given the bullying he faced when he came out. But I'm really glad we have somebody like the PE teacher to help try to cut through his own stuff, like his own internal feelings. So at least he's then, again, I'm going off script a little bit here because I didn't quite put enough detail in. But, you know, I like that the teacher is able to cut through what Charlie's feeling, so then all he has to deal with is what everybody else is feeling, kind of thing, which you can't control. But you can learn to figure out your own feelings. You can't control your feelings. That's kind of how feelings work. But when she says things like, a lot of gay people are good at sports, Charlie, it's that double whammy of don't get in your own way and don't let what anybody else thinks stop you from succeeding. That makes me sound like Rachel Hollis. I'm on some boss babe, like, you are your own emotions and wake up at 5 a.m. and privilege has nothing to do with the way my life is. I've got distracted again. But yeah, the rugby scene, it is very different. But I kind of like the way that it's moved to be a bit different, because what we've explored in these characters that weren't explored in the books, that wasn't explored in the books, is visible in scenes like this. So I like that. This isn't quite the kind of way that somebody like Dom Noble does adaptation reviews, where he is literally looking at, is this a good adaptation in terms of, did they take what was in the book and did they do it? But, you know, ow. Sorry, I'm sat in an incredibly uncomfortable position because I don't have a brain. Oh, that's only going to make it worse. Oh well, let's just sit with this. Yeah, so what I was saying was, you know, when Dom Noble does his... Why is my brain... Lost in adaptation, he is literally looking at what is taken from book to film, or series, but usually films. You know, what is taken from book to film and what is taken from book that means the film is lacking. Or in some cases, where taking things out of the book doesn't feel like things are missing and that kind of thing. You know, he is more professional at this than I am. Now, what I will say is, so much of the second half of the series is different. It's not that parts of the book have been taken away. In fact, like, not much has. It's not that much has actually been taken away from the book. It's just that there is so much more going on. There are a lot of bonus scenes. So if you are so inclined, maybe don't do the drinking game of take a shot every time I say bonus scene. Because next up we do have a bonus scene with Tao. He's just really snippy towards Nick. We get a tiny bit of that in the book, but there's just like I was just saying, it's not that it's different, it's just more. And why I think we do get more is because, I mean, not only are we exploring the side characters more in depth, but it's also that we've really got to see, in particular, Tao's insecurity about being on his own. And therefore, him being really snippy towards Nick makes a lot of sense. My feet hurt. Ow. We're not sitting like this anymore. Hopefully. See, I've suddenly shrunk. Do I need something to sit on? That's super embarrassing. That should do it. Right, I'm now sat on something so I can put my feet out in front of me. As well as the additional sort of change to the rugby practice, we actually get a rugby game in the series, which we don't get in the books. Now, like I say, I'm only looking at books 1 and 2. If, when I say there are added scenes and they're actually just scenes borrowed from later on in the series, my mistake. But from my research, I have found that this is adapting books 1 and 2. So I am just judging off of that. Now, oh my god, I've got pins and needles so bad in my right foot. Jesus Christ. Oh, my brain's shut off. Where was I talking about? Yeah, so if there is stuff later on, I will get to that, I suppose, when I review series 2, which I assume is at the very least going to cover book 3, and I'm pretty sure there is a book 4 as well, so I'm assuming it's going to be the same thing, covering 2 books. Oh my foot. Oh, why did I sit on my foot? Why do I do this to myself? I can feel it up my whole leg. Ah, Jesus. I am, Christ alive. Anyway, the bit I was talking about earlier where Charlie gets badly tackled, or at least not badly tackled, but he gets tackled and I think he gets a busted nose or something. And Nick has to then he takes him to, first aid or whatever, or a nurse's office, whatever, and he takes care of him there. The difference, it is a different scene, but that is the heart of what's going on there. Now in the book, there's a lot more sort of going on between them in that scene. In the book, I believe they kiss, and there's a lot more like romantic shit going on between them, whereas it's a little bit of awkward flirting in the series, followed by Isaac walking in on them and him going, oh, so that's what, like, he never says anything because he rarely does, he's quite a quiet character, but he's just like, okay, I see you. So yeah, most of this scene is new, apart from the kind of borrowed from earlier scene with the nursing back to health. In particular, I really like the fact that the opposing school is a bunch of grown-ass men. I think it's because they said it's like they're a specialist sports school or something, but in my heart of hearts, I know damn well that that is a piss take of the way that most teen fiction looks on screen. I'm looking at you, Euphoria. I didn't say it last week, but this week I am. I'm going to call you out. Euphoria, stop being weird about teenagers. I don't care that it's groundbreaking about the way it talks about mental health. Stop making characters who are like 16 be over-sexualized just because you've got a 25-year-old playing them. I'm distracted again, but I think I deserve to be. I refuse to watch that show. What I did like in particular was these little parallels that they kept showing between Nick's friend group and Charlie's friend group, and like they would just show the two groups beside each other, and I don't know, there was something really nice about that. I liked it. It ticked a little something in my brain. I don't know what it was, but I thought it was nice. At the end of that scene, we get the incredibly awkward Imogen asking Nick out on a date, and he's like very visibly, I don't want to do this, I have a boyfriend, but I can't say that, so I will say yes, I will go on a date with you. And I didn't write it up in my notes later on, but the scene where he's trying to, I think it's in the next episode, where he's like, I don't want to go on a date, but he doesn't get that far. He goes like, so about that date, and she's like, my dog died. That was very funny. I'm not particularly fond of Imogen's place in this, but that scene was so funny because I knew something was coming when he said that, and then when he's like trying to talk to her later on about not gone on the date, and he brings his dog, like, the idea that that could have gone either way, because just imagine if she's like, I can't bear to be around dogs right now, it hurts too much. He's so lucky that she was like, oh my god, I miss my dog and now I get to hang out with other dogs. But yeah, the scene where she actually asks him out is just deep levels of cringe, and like it's intentionally fucking cringe. So that is a compliment when I just say it. Like, I felt that here, and I'm just like, oh, stop. Oh, it's the fact that it's in front of everybody else, and it's just like, ah, oh, so uncomfy. I think I was making noises like that as I was watching. I'm just like, stop. Episode 5, Friend. This is where we get on to really short bits of script, talking about loads. I think I've got a page for episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8. I super did not have much to say about these, mostly because it would be so easy for me to go bonus scene, bonus scene, bonus scene. Some of this is the same. And yes, I'm aware that's what I've been doing for the whole thing, but so much of it is new that I don't want to just keep feeling like I'm repeating myself. So, like I say, I don't want to keep saying the same thing. But first thing we get in this episode is a bonus scene. It's a really sweet, like, Charlie and Cole gathering all together for a little game night. They're playing Monopoly. It is deeply petty, as is every game of Monopoly anybody has ever played. But I also like that they really hone in on the fact that, like, Monopoly is ridiculously long. I think there's a point in every game of Monopoly where you're like, I'm not even enjoying this anymore, but I need it to be over. And it's usually when there's like 2 players left in the game. Say you've been playing mid more. Usually, say you're playing with like 4 people, there's like 2 people left. Half the room does not want to, like, can't even be involved anymore. And half the room is stuck in the pettiest battle you've ever been in, and nobody particularly wants to be there anymore. And they really captured that. And it's a really short scene as well, but they really captured it. And I particularly liked the bit where Isaac just made it finish by kicking the board over, because we've all wanted to do that at some point. So, with the exception of where Charlie asks Nick to go bowling with him, pretty much everything up to the scene at the bowling alley, that whole episode is just added extras, and it still feels in tone with the books, but I don't feel like I need to talk about every single scene on its own. It's all new. It's all a little bit different. The thing we are missing is that, unless I missed it, and I very easily could have done, I don't recall Nick actually asking Charlie to go out later on with him and his friends to the cinema, but that scene still happens later. Let's get back into what we're supposed to be talking about. With there being so much more going on in the series, you know, the added extras, or the sort of bonus stuff, just with the main 2 characters and with the side characters and all that, there is an added level of tension to the series that you kind of don't get in the book. But it still keeps that tone so well. At no point does it ever start feeling like Riverdale or some shit. Like, it never feels like it's being escalated too far. That kind of mundane nature of this series I spoke about with the books is kept so well here, even though the tensions are raised. You know, it still feels like actual secondary school. However, we do get right back on track when we get to the bowling alley scene. Now, this is a bit of a blend of new stuff and completely lifted from the book stuff, but that is only because it's either stuff that is necessary to talk about from the series, or it's just these minor adaptational changes because you can't do that from the book in the same way. Well, you could, but it works better this way. So you've got, in the book, Nick saying about Elle, saying, oh, I know her, didn't she used to be, and then there's a little picture of what she used to look like a little very simple emoji style almost drawing of her. Whereas in the series, he's like, oh, don't I know her from somewhere? And Charlie's like, yeah, she used to go to your school. And similarly, later on, the scene where Tao and Charlie are talking in the bathroom, that is pretty much exactly the same, but there's a little added bit of, yeah, didn't you know that Nick was meant to be going on a date with Imogen? Obviously, that's not going to show up in the book, but it's going to show up here. Little stuff like that. And it all blends really seamlessly together so that it doesn't feel clunky. All the little added bits, it still feels like it's weaved into the narrative rather than being sort of, here's your complete narrative and then just, yeah, I would put that on top, it'll be fine. Now, the arcade scene is Luke. There is some dialogue lifted from the books. Particularly, I think it's like no crying on my birthday or no saying sorry on my birthday. I can't remember. That's pretty much the same as in the books, but it's now in the arcade rather than them being sat getting food together. And that whole arcade scene owns my heart. It's cute as shit. I love it so much. And the visuals are lovely as well. I have a real soft spot for scenes in places like arcades because the lighting always just looks divine. Like, it's usually things like blues and purples and like little flashes and that sort of stuff. There's something that taps into my brain with visuals in arcades. I love it so much. Now in this case, obviously there's no retro stuff going on, but if you give me retro looking arcade oh, I love it so much. Yes, I am currently thinking about San Junipero, the fucking Black Mirror episode, because it's so good and I love it so very much. Gays and arcades is just the ultimate win. Episode 6. Girls. Now, one day I will stop starting my little paragraphs and sentences and shit like that with now or so, but they're just easy ills for paragraphs. When I see them in my script, I try and remove them, but then I just fucking say them anyway. I do feel incredibly called out by Nick watching Pirates of the Caribbean and then Googling what bisexuality is. Like, yeah. There's something in particular about that film that really did have an effect on a lot of people who would grow up to be bi. No, I am not talking about any actors in that film and their personal lives. It's not about me. Anyway, I hope Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley are having a good day, and I'm not talking about anybody else. I mean, to be fair, those were the two that really made my brain go, both? Boy and girl? Both? I mean, it was more than just that. I mean, you grew up watching wrestling. What do you expect to happen? But I need to get back on track, on script. Where am I supposed to be? Yeah. That's what I was... Yeah. So, you know, he Googles bisexuality right after watching Pirates of the Caribbean. Big mood. And quite frankly, sometimes things being catered to the gays means you get seen a bit too much. So I have previously spoken about the fact that I was unsure about the decision for Tara to come out rather than already be out in the series. Now, in the book, she was just already out, but in the series, she came out. Now, what I do think is that we already have an idea that bullying goes on because of being gay. We've already had that from Charlie, and yes, I know we don't necessarily always see it quite so much because a lot of that's died down, but I am on the fence of wondering how much we benefit from seeing her get properly bullied. You know, I think we're all sort of aware that that happens, but I think what I am doing is seeing that from an adult lens who has passed high school or secondary school, whatever you want to call it. You know, I'm past that age, and I've already been through all of that because I did get a few like, oh fuck me, yeah, I remember that. And I think maybe that's where I'm missing that, because I think if I'd have seen her go through the, like when I was going through that myself, if I'd have seen her go through the works and have somebody there with her, you know, comforting her, going, no, this literally just, they get bored of this. Because Darcy came out previously, she's already been through all that once, and she just brushes a lot of it off. And while that looks like she just doesn't care about what's going on whenever they say all the awful stuff, because at first I was curious as to why she wasn't reacting, and then later on it explains that she's been out for ages. And I get that, because in my year at school, I was one of the first people to come out. It fucking sucks, because you're the one who gets all of the jokes and all of the comments. Now, I'm not saying that nobody else got them, but people really do get bored the further down the line it gets. Like, it's one of those things where you learn to put up an armor really quickly, and you can see that Darcy has done that. Tara, unfortunately, she shouldn't have to learn this, but Tara is learning that. And I do understand that if you are a teenager, seeing somebody who is going through the same things as you, knowing that she will pull through it, she can and will do that, she's got a support system. Perfect. That's what you want to see. You want to see somebody with a support system, and that's what she's got. So like I said, I wasn't sure at first about seeing her getting bullied, but I took my time with it and figured it out. Now, what I will say is, they were way more polite than any of the girls were at my fucking school. And not just the girls, actually. The guys were just as bad. The guys were worse most of the time. But, fucking hell. Most of their knowledge of lesbians did not come from owing gay people. It came from being online, shall we say. And I'd say lesbian with the knowledge that a few things have changed in my life, knowing that I am both into guys and I am one. So, you know, things changed since secondary school, but that's fine. That's Gucci. But yeah, they were a lot more reserved in Heartstopper, and I'm very glad about that. Christ alive, I don't think they would have got away with a teen rating with half the shit that I got fucking asked. Shall we move on from bullying chat? So I don't know if I said earlier, but honestly, the way that book 2 is adapted is very different to book 1. Book 1 feels a lot more like, here is your book with some little extras slipped in, whereas book 2 feels more like, here's a story, here's a Heartstopper story that we wrote, and we've added the book back in. It feels a little bit more like that. So we have the dialogue from the conservatory scene earlier, but the visuals of it match a completely different scene. It is an unusual adaptation, but it still really works. The scene where Nick tells Tara that he and Charlie are seeing each other, and she's the first person to find out. That scene is pretty much exactly the same. The only difference is being like minor dialogue changes, but these are there to fit in Tara's new narrative. It works a bit like the way that the bowling alley scene did, as it still feels like much of the same scene. It's just obviously you've got to have the little bits of narratively it's going to be a little bit different because there's new and altered things in the series. It works great. I also just the double date scene. It's all new, that scene, and it's so good. We've got some great character development going on. Darcy's meddling is incredibly funny, but I think overall the best character development and thing that we see there is Tao. The way his character is worked with there, and the way it's very clear that maybe some of his insecurities about being left out aren't entirely unfounded. He is the last person to find out about Nick and Charlie, and in the end of the day, he doesn't even find out from either of them, especially not from Charlie. So what comes later on with him makes a lot of sense, and this scene really centers in on that, and I really like that. I really like the way that works. I think it works really well. How many times am I going to say that phrase? I leave the thesaurus on hand when I'm filming. So yeah, that episode is another one where there's a lot of like shuffling and like loose stuff, but there's some of it is just like certain scenes where you've got book scenes literally moved later on in the narrative, but that's just because there's so many more bonus scenes. Effectively, they still kind of feel like they're in the same place, and this episode really shows that in a lot of ways. Episode 7, Bully. Like I was talking about at the end of the last episode section, there are some scenes that just get shuffled a bit later, but that's only because there's other stuff happening. Say this was a direct adaptation, no loose stuff, it would still, like, say there was no loose stuff, not talking about direct adaptation, but say this was just an adaptation of the books themselves, no loose stuff, they would still fit in exactly the same place. It's just they're a bit later on now because of the loose stuff, because of the added extras. Sorry, my brain just keeps turning off today. I'm having one of those days, and I have got to edit this the same day because once again, your man doesn't understand how to do time management well. Quick editing note here. So I was talking about the fact that I had to edit it the same day, and I thought I'll get this finished by like 6, 7 o'clock. At the very least, I'll, get most of it edited. I can always add bits like the music or whatever in later. It is now, let me check. Yeah, it's now 10:15. Because I got about halfway through through editing, and thought, I'm feeling really sleepy. And there's a lot in the video that I cut out of me taking breaks going, I feel tired, I feel sleepy. So I thought, fuck it. I'll take a quick nap. It was meant to be 25 minutes, because apparently I've heard that 25 minutes is meant to be optimum nap time. It means you get your rest, but you don't enter REM sleep or something. Right? Great. I woke up 3 hours later, with my head where my feet were, with my face pressed into the sofa cushions. So, needless to say, it was a great nap, and 10 out of 10 would recommend. So, the brain. So the scene that is moved a bit later in this one is a scene with Charlie and Tori, where Tori being his older sister, and Charlie is, talking to her about going to meet up with Lick's friends, and she's really sweet with him in this section. Fuck me. Scene. That's the word I'm trying to think of. She's really sweet with him in this scene because it's very clear that she's remaining big sister-in-law for being a bit snarky and whatever, but that older sibling protective instinct is still very clear. She's still very much, are you sure about this? These are the people that were actively bullying you this time last year. And he still goes, but it's very clear that she's looking at him like, you don't have to go if you don't want to, just because you want to hang out with a boy that you like. Speaking of hanging out with a boy that he likes, the scene at the beginning of the whole cinema section, where he calls him Char, is once again right out of the book, and it is still very cute, very sweet. I love it very, very much. I think it's adorable. It's one of those things I'm kind of glad is left in, because it could easily have been cut. It's not the most important scene, but it feels like preemptive light relief given what is coming up later on with Harry being a bellend. From start to finish, from them meeting up at the cinema through to post-fight Lick talking to his mum, it's almost exactly the same, and it is heartbreaking and painful. The two main differences are that Belle has been added, and that is sort of to come up later. And also, as with a few of the other fights and stuff like that, we've got some bad language removed. How terrible. It happens. You've got to do it sometimes. And it's non-noticeable. The one thing that they do keep is that they still have Harry throwing out the F-bomb. Now, I don't mean the word fuck, otherwise I would have said it. I mean, as in the slur towards the gays. I've typed it every now and again, but I don't ever feel comfortable saying it. It just never feels comfortable coming out of my mouth unless I'm talking about cigarettes. If that helps you understand what I'm talking about. But that, once again, it does not feel cheap. There is sometimes in media, especially a lot of teen media I've found, where when particularly that slur is used, and maybe that's just because that affects me kind of thing, that sounds like I'm being really selfish, but hang on, sorry, I had an ECG earlier, and she forgot to take off 2 of the pads. I just had an itchy chest, and I was like, oh, there's something here. Yeah, she forgot to take those off. I'll pop those in my bin. Back to it. Sometimes when in media you have slurs being used, they feel cheap. They just feel like another word being thrown around. They feel no different to using swear words. And I'm really glad that in both book and series it is an impact. That word, it's like it's suddenly highlighted and in bold, and you're like, it's there. And that's how, if you're going to use that shit in your fiction, that's how it should feel. It should not feel like a throwaway thing, and it does not in, I will say, the Heartstopper franchise. In the books, Nick and Charlie actually wake up the same night. Now, what that is because the next day they then meet up and you get the whole thing at the beach and all of that. That happens much closer in the books. There is a huge, like, the whole next episode is a huge added extra kind of thing. So what that means is, with that, no, brain, come on, keep going. In the series, you don't get that. You don't get them making up the same lie. And my instinct was then to go, oh, so either Tao or Tori is gonna then, like, those little protective instincts, because we've seen that throughout the series that both of them do have protective instincts over him. Someone's gonna kick off. It's Tao. Tao's protective instincts are the ones that kick off. We also learn about the fight between Harry and Lick from Harry instead, which we don't in the book. We do find that out because of Lick. So the thing is, Tao is very protective over Charlie, and he tries, but eventually he just feels like it's not worth it for him to do that anymore, and him and Charlie have a falling out. And I really felt it. It really felt like one of those friendship breakup type moments, and those are just as heartbreaking as romantic relationship breakups, because you gotta love your friends. And it's very clear that everybody in the series, like, the relationships between these friends, it is coming from a place of love, and it's just heartbreaking when that happens. But I get where he's coming from. You know, Tao's already got all these insecurities about loneliness and all his friends leaving him behind, and then Charlie does keep buggering off. And for the longest time, they didn't know that Lick is in any way not straight. They didn't know. And the rest of the friends then didn't know for the longest time that Charlie and Lick were seeing each other. And it's just, it kind of makes sense that Tao's going to be a bit off. Also, I really like that the fight between him and Harry absolutely looks like the most secondary school boys fight you've ever seen. And I say boys fight because girls fights are different. Jesus Christ. I have seen people get scalped. Christ alive, they are horrendous. But boys fights, that was exactly what I remember. It is a lot of pushing and shoving, and then a lot of this. There's no punches thrown most of the time. I mean, you get that with Harry and Lick, but they are both, you know, they're both sporty kind of guys. Are more likely to be aggressive towards each other in a kind of traditional fight kind of way. Whereas playground fights, it's pushing and flailing. It's a lot of it's just shoving and flailing. That's all it is. It's a lot of this. Like you're swimming in air and smacking each other. It's so pathetic, and it's always been very funny. Episode 8, Boyfriend. We're on to the final episode. Look at us go. Who'd have thought? At the beginning of this episode, we get a scene that is really hard to watch, but is just a brilliant scene overall, and that is the scene with Charlie opening up and, quite frankly, breaking down in front of Tori. And it's one of those scenes that not only is it a wonderful, like, big sister moment, it's a really big showing of Tori's character a lot more, but also we get little snippets of what's expected to come from Charlie later on. If you know anything about Charlie's later story, either you've read the later books, or you know about the later books, or you've read Solitaire, you know that Charlie Spring is not a stable boy. And warning, by the way, a lot of that is linked to food. To lighten it up a little bit, something that I noticed throughout this, but throughout the series, but especially in this episode, is that in Charlie's friend group, they all tell each other that they love each other, and I think that's wonderful, particularly knowing that you've got 3 guys in that group. Seeing friendship being shown as something that is genuinely wonderful. But the last part of this episode, I'm gonna rattle through it really quickly, because the whole sports day scene is brand new. It's all bonus, it's all extra, and there's not really much for me to say about that adaptation of it. It's all brand new. We get some wonderful character development moments. I love in particular the part where Nick just stops playing, where he's just like, fuck this, and he just goes up to Charlie. I think that's the cutest shit. I love seeing the development. You get a little scene in the art room with Tao and Elle, and their like relationship developing, and also with Tao and Charlie making up again. It's all really sweet, it's all really cute, and it's just lovely. It's more of what you want from, if you were to ask for more of this please with what happens in the actual books, it would reflect something like the sports day scene. The final 2 scenes though, where you have the day at the beach and Lick coming out to his mum, those are pretty much lifted exactly from the books. I think both of those scenes are very, very lovely. They own my heart. That beach scene, I think everybody watches that beach scene and just goes, yep, this is gonna sit in here in my old little heart and spark joy in it. And yeah, him talking to his mom is just very sweet, and I really liked him being like, do you know what bisexuality is? And him just looking him in the eye like, yes, thank you. I wasn't born over 100 years ago, thank you. And I just, yeah, it's very sweet. And overall, I was crying at the end, by the way. Definitely 100%. I was just crying at the end, and I don't feel shame about that. But, you know, this series overall is incredibly well adapted, but there is something odd about book 2, the way it was done. You know, it's still adapted well. The stuff that is taken from the book is still adapted well. The bonus stuff still feels like it still could have been there. But in comparison to book 1, I feel like I spent a lot less time when I was watching to compare. I felt like a lot more of book 1 in the book watching kind of thing. So going, yes, that's the same. We can go to that scene. And there's a bit of skipping through here, but and that's been shuffled. But with book 2, it was a lot more watching for a while going, I don't remember this. Is this in here? No, that is new. Because some of it is similar. And then going, oh, but that's the dialogue from that bit. But that's visually clearly that scene. Right? Oh, and that's been... There is a lot more differences with the adaptation of book 2. But I'm not mad about it. It's still adapted really well. And it still feels... You know, I've said this 1,000 times, I think. But it still feels like Heartstopper. It still feels like it's got... I mean, because it does. But it still feels like it's got Alice Osman's touch. So I think it's bloody brilliant. Yeah, I will definitely be doing this for Series 2 when that comes out. Because I believe that's got the green light now that we are getting a Series 2. So I really look forward to that. And don't get me wrong, because it's on Netflix, I am a bit nervous about how long it will be renewed, because Netflix has a habit of cancelling things. But I'm looking at you one day at a time. I mean, I believe that was picked up elsewhere, but there is a convenience with it being on Netflix. I dread to think how much the views dropped when it moved elsewhere. Right, so let's talk about next week. Next week we have 2 books, both of which I picked up purely for aesthetic reasons. Sorry, I am getting comfy. Sorry if that is loud. First up is My Best Friend's Exorcism by... I don't know because I can't find... there we go. Grady Hendrix. This is the cover with this on the back. I picked it up after ages of wanting to pick. I mean, when did this come out? I am curious. Yeah, so this came out in 2017. And it's probably been since then that I have wanted to pick it up. Or at least not that long after. It has been years that I've been seeing it in Waterstones that I've gone, I'll get it at some point. I'll get it at some point. Because it just... the VHS thing with all the fake little stickers like the Be Kind, Please Rewind. And the little... oh, these little touches. It just looks so good. And I feel like it's one of those horror kind of books that feels like, yeah, it needs to be read in the summer. High school sophomores Abby and Gretchen have been best friends since 4th grade. But after an evening of skinny dipping goes disastrously wrong, Gretchen begins to act different. She's moody, she's irritable, and bizarre incidents keep happening whenever she's nearby. Abby's investigation leads her to some startling discoveries, and by the time their story reaches its terrifying conclusion, the fate of Abby and Gretchen will be determined by a single question. Is their friendship powerful enough to beat the devil? This just seems like if The Exorcist was a teen comedy flick. Not like comedy, but like dark comedy type. But it feels like what if The Exorcist was more of a teen drama kind of thing. And I think that's super fun. I just look at the cover. Look at it. Look at the cover. It's so nice. Now, I picked it up because when I was out, I mean, it was probably about a month and a half ago that I was out picking these up, if not more than that now. But when I saw this IKEA catalogue looking thing called Heartstopper by... also, wait, is this by the same person? I didn't even fucking realise. I didn't even notice. This is also by Grady Hendrix, so clearly is very good at doing concepts and shit for the fucking books. You got me. You got me. I saw this and was immediately like, this is the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. And the insides look like the IKEA thing. I don't know if that's the same on the back. Yes it is. But that's like... and once I've read the thing to you, but my instinct, I'll let you know why that really cemented that for me, but my instinct was, I don't know what SCP number it is, but there is an SCP which is like a spooky IKEA, and that's what I thought. And obviously this is totally not IKEA. Of course not. Something strange is happening at the Orsk Furniture Superstore in Cleveland, Ohio. Every morning, employees arrive to find broken Keurig bookshelves, shattered glass water goblets, and smashed Liripip wardrobes. Sales are down, security cameras reveal nothing, and store managers are panicking. To unravel the mystery, 3 employees volunteer to work a 9-hour dusk till dawn shift. In the dead of night, they'll patrol the empty showroom floor, investigate strange sights and sounds, and encounter horrors that defy the imagination. A traditional haunted house story in a thoroughly contemporary setting, Heartstopper is designed to retain its lustre and natural appearance for a lifetime of use. Pleasingly proportioned, with generous French flaps and softcover binding, Heartstopper delivers the psychological terror you need in the elegant package you deserve. Tell me this is good. And the inside is just novel, honestly. It with some extra bits with like the chapter and stuff, but the fact that they, oh, look at this, look at that, oh, it's so put together, like, fuck, bitch, I've not been excited about like the visuals of a book like this for so long. Like, I want to do shit like that. I want to do shit like that so fucking bad. Now what's coming next week? So we got the Grady Hendrix special apparently next week. I don't know if the insides of My Best Friend's Exorcism are different. I doubt it. No, that is literally just book. But that's not surprising. That is mostly like external cover. And then he went all out for Horrorstopper. And I just think that's fucking beautiful. I'm obsessed with it a little bit. Right. I will see you all next week for the review on those. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you're watching this. I will see you all very, very soon. Bye-bye. Right.